After shipping Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic on PC in late 2003, a team led by Casey Hudson entered pre-production on Mass Effect, the project that would allow BioWare to explore its own space opera across a three-part epic. Mass Effect's groundbreaking choice-based systems and role-playing elements set the bar for many RPGs that followed, and solidified BioWare as one of gaming's most pioneering studios. An innovative save system capable of carrying user progress across each entry further elevated the experience. But the characters, the stories, the carefully crafted lore, both pronounced and subtle, along with the player's intimate role in it all, encouraged millions to flock aboard the Normandy in every form it took. The perceived belittlement of the player's role at the trilogy's end tainted the journey for some, however, leaving whatever came next with a decidedly tall order to fill. Shifting their focus to the new IP, later known as Anthem, Mass Effect leads at BioWare's main office in Edmonton assigned the next installment to BioWare Montreal, the support group previously responsible for Mass Effect 3's multiplayer and Omega DLC. A long road lay ahead for the team, its destination locked to the Andromeda galaxy, pulling Mass Effect away from the Milky Way, Commander Shepard, and the once all-encompassing Reaper threat. Other challenges beyond the stressors of changing the scenery and protagonists beset much of the project's development, though. An unclear vision, mismanagement, bouts of infighting, and technological woes each contributed to Mass Effect Andromeda's less-than-stellar release, as well as the series' impromptu hiatus. This is the tragedy of Mass Effect Andromeda. To complement existing efforts on Mass Effect 2's development, BioWare and Electronic Arts established a 30-person team within the EA Montreal offices in summer 2009. This bespoke BioWare Montreal outfit reported directly to studio leadership and created cinematics and N7 missions for the Mass Effect sequel. The group's responsibilities grew considerably in subsequent years, tasked with building the Mass Effect 3 multiplayer and Omega DLC pack. Speaking with Game Informer in 2016, then General Manager Aaron Flynn noted it was clear during production on the trilogy's final entry that brand leadership would move on and leave the Montreal crew to shepherd the spacefaring series through another expansive adventure. Higher-ups didn't abandon the property's new overseers, though. Before exclusively casting his attention towards laying Anthem's foundations, series co-creator Casey Hudson assisted in carving out a fresh direction for Mass Effect, specifically with regards to the tentative previously unseen characters venturing to Andromeda. But a post-Reaper invasion story only entered the picture once BioWare cast aside considerations for a prequel set during the First Contact War. Reportedly, the decision to look to the future stemmed from community feedback and internal opinions that predominantly expressed an interest in Mass Effect moving forward. With the untapped potential of Andromeda as a baseline, pre-production on the new installment began in 2013. BioWare Montreal increased its headcount throughout the year, with game director Gerard Leonie coming on board as one of the key hires. Leonie's work as creative director on a couple of Activision's Spider-Man games, in addition to his story design credit for Ghost Recon Advanced Warfighter, made him an interesting choice. In some respects, it proved a shrewd move on BioWare's part too. According to Kotaku's reporting on Mass Effect Andromeda's troubled production, Leonie devised several story concepts, one being the central theme of the Citadel Council assigning explorers the task of identifying habitable planets in Andromeda. If attempts to repel the Reaper invasion failed, a home millions of light years away from home would at least give Milky Way species a fighting chance at survival. Developers wanted players to establish civilization elsewhere as a pathfinder, responsible for leading a team that explored hundreds of Andromeda-based planets, thereby stripping the series of its more scripted elements. In pursuit of such an ambitious goal, Leonie proposed procedural generation as a way to efficiently craft over 100 explorable worlds. It essentially represented BioWare's answer to No Man's Sky, months before developer Hello Games revealed its space exploration adventure. And by most accounts, the Montreal crew members were eager to explore the wide-spanning possibilities, with some staffers telling Kotaku that pre-production on Andromeda throughout 2013 counted amongst the most creatively fulfilling times in their careers. Development throughout 2014 evoked the exact opposite feeling in employees, their lofty ambitions clashing with the limitations of the resources and technology at the studio's disposal. Early in production, BioWare Montreal leads combed through the original vision documents for Mass Effect, poring over what the Edmonton team initially set out to achieve years prior. Deep exploration elements once sat at the forefront, for instance. Aaron Flynn told Game Informer that budget constraints, hardware limitations, and time restrictions kept the team from fully delivering on such promises. Mass Effect Andromeda, while still honoring its heritage, was billed as a realization of the franchise's earlier aspirations. The multitude of procedurally generated worlds would help achieve these ends, along with spaceflight mechanics and an all-new version of the Mako ground vehicle. Ideas of this nature seemed sound on paper, but injecting them into a BioWare-style framework proved trying. In addition, Electronic Arts' fixation on the DICE-developed Frostbite engine ensured the new Mass Effect innovations would run afoul of technical errors. Dragon Age Inquisition marked the first BioWare project developed on Frostbite, and despite the engine's sophistication, the team in Edmonton found building its own tools a necessary hurdle to overcome if the technology was to pair with role-playing mechanics. Unfortunately for the Montreal group, even the Inquisition-based modifications weren't enough to guarantee Frostbite could competently power a Mass Effect adventure, let alone one on the scale of Andromeda. Sources who spoke to Kotaku post-release likened the engine to a Formula One car. It could perform some tasks incredibly well, better than most, yet struggled mightily in other areas. Because DICE designed Frostbite for its Battlefield series, handling large vehicles constituted one of its specialties. Thus, developers had no problem bringing Mass Effect's all-terrain land vehicle Nomad online. Andromeda's massive maps, on the other hand, were a no-go for technology that rendered locations no larger than 100 kilometers by 100 kilometers. Franchise staples like a manual save system ventured outside of Frostbite's baked-in parameters as well. The team also had to attach an external animation system known as ANT, though it too became riddled with what one developer described as duct tape issues. On top of the technical woes, pre-production on Andromeda engendered discord between the Edmonton and Montreal teams. Staff from the former allegedly believed the latter lacked a strong vision for Mass Effect's future. Meanwhile, some Montreal developers felt the other studio intended to undermine them by stealing and repurposing their ideas for Dragon Age and Anthem. Worse still, Casey Hudson's departure from BioWare in August 2014 and Gerard Leonie's exit from the Andromeda crew not too long thereafter further compounded these issues. And by the end of the year, approximately 12 animators had quit, leaving Montreal's animation team understaffed since many of the vacant positions went unfilled. Leonie's resignation in particular caused a creative shift that drastically affected production. Mass Effect veteran Mac Walters filled the role of creative director, bringing a vision that differed from what Leonie established during his brief tenure on the project. Still, the basic structure remained in place throughout 2014 and well into the following year. Controls for combat and the Nomad felt promising by summer 2015. Spaceflight functioned too, but functional mechanics didn't make fun gameplay. Few of Andromeda's problems were resolved by year's end. Given that technical issues continued to run rampant, some departments lacked much-needed resources. Procedurally generated planets had yet to pan out, and the list went on. It didn't help that BioWare switched from its usual 3D Studio Max animation program to Maya during pre-production. Higher-ups considered the shift necessary following recommendations from Autodesk, the company responsible for both programs. Regardless of necessity, the switch cost animators dearly, rendering most of their pre-production efforts useless, though some later utilized 3ds Max anyway. An understaffed animation crew only exacerbated these issues, and while outsourcing to support studios from around the globe helped, one person claimed Andromeda's story and other design decisions came on so late that relying on outsourcing proved difficult. All in all, the little progress achieved during pre-production fell victim to a mid-development reboot. Notably, BioWare Montreal reduced plans for hundreds of procedurally generated worlds to about half a dozen handcrafted explorable planets. Flight additionally landed on the cutting room floor. Meanwhile, multiplayer, combat mechanics, and Nomad controls left the redesign phase unscathed. But departments responsible for level design and story inevitably fell behind schedule. And since creative leads reportedly spent much of pre-production focusing on elements such as Ryder, the protagonist, and the final mission on Meridian, a good chunk of the connective tissue, dialogue and quests, for example, still demanded attention. At this point, Mass Effect Andromeda was roughly 2 years out from its March 2017 release. Though one former developer disputes the claim, Several others maintain the bulk of Andromeda's production was backloaded to the last 18 months of its development cycle. Embattled by intense periods of crunch that some staffers characterized as the worst of their careers, the final stretch consisted of regression at nearly every turn due to a stream of recurring glitches. In-game errors regularly surfaced and received the necessary fixes, then re-emerged later, often without an identifiable source. While Aaron Flynn insisted that Andromeda's preview period was light on details because of an attempt to avoid false promises, it later became clear the project's shortcomings also played a part in the pre-release lull. The first and only BioWare Montreal-developed Mass Effect installment entered Early Access on May 16, 2017 for EA Access and Origin Access subscribers. It didn't take long for the memes to kick into high gear. Clips of Andromeda's bizarre walking animations inundated the internet in a matter of hours. Unsettling facial animations similarly took the web by storm, particularly those involving almost comically bad lip-syncing. Needless to say, questions abounded about how developers could have possibly missed the mark in this regard. Former Mass Effect trilogy animator Jonathan Cooper explained what likely went wrong in a lengthy Twitter thread amid unfair comparisons to the likes of Uncharted 4. The latter's controlled character encounters meant Naughty Dog animators, Cooper included, filled each scene with bespoke animations, whereas RPGs boasted a significantly greater volume of content, especially considering player choice. 2007's Mass Effect featured over 8 hours of facial performance. 2017's Horizon Zero Dawn packed in approximately 15 hours. As technology evolved, so too did player expectations. For demanding projects like this, designers typically stitched pre-created animations together in a manner comparable to how DJs sample music tracks. Cooper divulged that separating dialogue into quality tiers based on importance or probability of occurrence represented another step in the process. Thus, an algorithm that generated baseline quality sequences handled lower quality scenes. Default lip sync, hand movements, and body movements, based on the dialogue text, populated all three of the original Mass Effect experiences. Cooper posited a potentially lower quality base algorithm in Andromeda led to strange instances like a character's tired face expression. This decision presumably stemmed from BioWare Montreal's belief that it could target every line of dialogue by hand, a task the team must have underestimated. Those familiar with Andromeda's development said the explanation from Cooper was the most accurate they'd seen circulating online. Irrespective of the reasoning, the response to the new Mass Effect and its myriad glitches proved polarizing at best. The Montreal studio deployed fixes as quickly as possible across multiple post-launch updates, with April 2017's patch 1.05 providing some of the more transformative changes, namely those related to improvements for facial acting, lip sync, and writers' movements. Additional rounds of bug fixes followed in subsequent weeks and months, all aiding in Andromeda's eventual metamorphosis into a much better production. Yet it was too little, too late. In May 2017, sources familiar with internal operations claimed BioWare Montreal had begun scaling down, relocating some staffers to EA Montreal for Battlefront 2 development, while those who remained were assisting on Anthem. A small group supported Andromeda with main game and multiplayer patches, but hopes of DLC were dashed in August when BioWare confirmed Update 1.10 would constitute the last content patch of consequence. A blog post added that Andromeda was designed to further expand on the Pathfinder's journey with story-based Apex multiplayer missions. In addition, stories such as the fate of the Quarian Ark would receive deeper exploration in tie-in novels and comics. The news left fans reeling, especially in the wake of rumors that EA planned to shelve Mass Effect despite Andromeda successfully generating year-on-year revenue growth for the company. Questions posed in-game concerning Ryder's family and the unidentified benefactor of the Andromeda initiative seemed purposefully open-ended for future exploration in an expansion. However, Anthem's lead producer Mike Gamble told a 2018 PAX West audience, BioWare never drew plans for long-term Andromeda support. Contextually, his comment contrasted the former's live service model to the latter's lack of a similar system. Mass Effect faithful dismissed the notion either way, given the lingering narrative threads which may continue dangling in the vast void of space should the next entry revisit the trilogy as hinted in its reveal trailer. Sure, a disastrous release contributed to the failings of Mass Effect Andromeda. Yet the real tragedy, the scarcely mentioned but never forgotten truth, is that an entire universe's storytelling potential slipped through the cracks because of unforced errors permeating one game. A game that, in hindsight, deserves a second chance it may never receive. Thank you for watching. We'd like to take this time to thank, by name, the generous patrons who have pledged to our Hall of Fame reward tier. Maktoum Saeed Al Maktoum, Paul Cousineau, and those currently subscribed to our producer reward tier. Darirap Sigurdsson, GetWrecked.com, Lame Game Man, Schizo Lingvo. If you enjoy our content, please consider subscribing to our channel and backing us on Patreon.